Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I'm so excited to have you all and to have this conversation with you. We're so excited. This is the first of 6 conversations that we're going to be having over the next few weeks. In fact, we're going to be talking about this wonderful world of making sure that trade is fair every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And we'll be talking about all of this at 11 o'clock in the morning, but that's East African time. So if you're in any other time zone, don't forget to set your clock and your alarm and join us for these different conversations. My name is Wangeci Gitata Kiriga, and I am a senior advisor with Kijani Group, and I'm going to be your host and moderator this morning. We're going to be having a conversation about making trade fair. And I really hope that you will join us and give your comments as we go along and talk a little bit more about this. And I'm really happy to have with me today on this e-studio, Musa Mpofu, who is with WFTO in South Africa, with Bernard Outah, who is the regional director of WFTO for Africa and the Middle East, and also with Fred Masinde, who is somebody who has been part of this fair trade family for actually close to a couple of decades. And he's going to tell us all about what it means to be fair trade, what it means to be part of this movement of trying to make things better. People are talking a lot right now about building back better, building back with an eye not only on profitability, but with an eye on the people that are involved in leadership that is people-centered, and proudly able to say that fair trade has really had this model from the very beginning. But then what does that all mean? And that's part of the conversation that we're going to have today. So to all of my guests, shall we start with what it means? What does fair trade mean to you? And could you just give me 3 words each that describe what fair trade is? And we're going to start with ladies first. So Musa, you get to go.
That's perfect, because then I don't have to repeat anyone else's answer. Good morning, everybody. I would say fair trade is really people over profit. People above profit.
Okay. And Fred, you're next.
Oh, thank you, everybody, for having me here. Briefly, I'll just say it's about trade, people, and planet.
Fantastic. And Bernard, what do you say?
Of course, we talk about fair trade. First of all, you talk about trade. So in the first instance, we need to do trade and do trade fairly. So I think in doing that trade, of course, we need to think about the people who are impacted most with that trade, who are the producers or the farmers or the artisans. So that to me is the key element in what it'll take to make trade fair.
Okay. So I'm hearing a couple of things from you. So you've talked about the fact that trade, of course, needs to continue to happen. You've talked about the fact that there are artisans and there are producers who are, I guess, literally doing that, producing these different things that are being traded. But, what do we mean when we say that that something along how this trade is being done needs to be made fair? So if you could give us a few thoughts around that, and what do we mean by making trade fair? I'll give it to you first, Musa. Go for it.
Okay. I wasn't sure. Okay, so I would say the general system is very capitalist. So the money goes to a certain group of people. It goes to a small part of the value chain. And with fair trade, we are essentially saying the money needs to spread to right across the value chain, where everyone is benefiting, from the person making the product to the person selling the product to the person buying the product. So across the value chain, there needs to be a balance. You can't have 90% of the money going to the owner of the shop or the investors of that shop or that chain or that retail chain or whatever, and only 0.1% goes to the producer. That's unfair because they're actually doing most of the work. They are making this product. Had they not made the product, there would be nothing available to sell in your shop. So we need to get the system to a place as we build better, as we build back. We need to get the system to a place where the producer is able to benefit from the money that is being made. The producer needs to make money where they can sustain themselves, sustain their families. They need to, not just have the general basics, but let's appreciate the producer as a human being and let them live a dignified life where they're able to make money to sustain themselves and their family.
Yeah, I think it was Mahatma Gandhi who said that there is enough for every man's need, but not for even one man's greed, right? But that said, Bernard, we've used this word quite a few times. I mean, we're only 7 minutes in, and we've already used the word fair trade so many times. So, could you tell us a little bit about fair trade, a little bit about the organization that you represent, World Fair Trade Organization?
Thanks, Wangeci. Of course, if you think about fair trade globally, then you think about the worldwide fair trade networks, and WFTO is one of those fair trade networks. And talk about WFTO, I think one also needs to reflect on the entire history of fair trade, and there are a lot of history written about this, and it dates back to the 1940s, where there are a lot of initiatives, a lot of engagement, especially among the civil society organizations, on how to improve the living condition of people who are involved in production. And at the time, I think, how do we, more or less from a charity point of view, how do we help? I mean, that was a word. How do we help people are producing artifacts, for example, to reach the market? And so that formed part and parcel of the history of fair trade in the 40s. And of course, there are people, there's a lot of social interest, social reflection on how do we improve the well-being of people, especially people in the, as it were, in the global south. And it was not until 1989, if I'm not wrong, when WFTO came into being. At that time, referred to as IFAT, the International Federation for Alternative Trade, and building on that history, then a system was set up that brought together producers, in this case, in the broader sense, and buyers. And buyers, of course, is a structure that links the products with the consumers.
Correct.
And so that became the journey of WFTO. And as we speak today, WFTO has a membership across the globe of over 400 producers and buyers. And buyers, these are basically enterprises, of course, and producers are also enterprises across the globe, and reaching out to almost 1 million families, many of whom are in the global south, whether in Africa or in Asia or in Latin America. And the idea is to promote businesses or social enterprises that are prioritizing the people who are doing the business and taking care of the planet. I mean, the planet is the resource from where we are tapping all these products from. So WFTO in Africa and Middle East has that mandate of coordinating what happens within the region, and the other regions, of course, are taking care of their respective regions, and the global network, which is based in the Netherlands, is taking care of all of us and ensuring that there is sufficient engagement between the producers in the global south and the buyers largely in the global north.
Okay, but now there's been a lot of discussion in more recent times, I would say maybe the last 10 years or so, where people are talking about social enterprises. Is there a difference between a social enterprise and being a fair trade business?
I think there's a lot in common between what it means to be a fair enterprise and a social enterprise. And what is common between these two is the whole idea of what mission they are standing for. I mean, what mission is leading your business, and if you have a mission, or if your business mission is one that is prioritizing people and the entire planet, ecological realm of things, then you'll primarily be able to meet the requirement of a fair trade enterprise, and that also is very closely linked with what a social enterprise is. So, I think the core is in the mission of the business, so that you are not led by how much money you make. I mean, it's good to make money; it's business, but how you use that money,
correct,
is where the difference is.
Okay, so Fred, tell us about Undugu Fair Trade. Tell us when it was started, and then when you joined them. I'm very curious to hear. And actually, also, what does Undugu Fair Trade do? Of course.
Okay. Thank you very much, Wangeci and the rest of the panel. Of course, Undugu's story is a long story, and we can take a whole day talking about it. But just in brief, Undugu Fair Trade was an intervention of Undugu Society of Kenya, a child-based organization that was started a long time in 1973. But one of the interventions was at that time they were focusing mainly on the street children, the boys who are living on the streets. But these boys, generally, they come from families. So there is a reason why these were being found in the streets. And therefore, the founders of Undugu Society thought that as much as we want to rescue the children from the streets, we also need to look at why are they there. And the answer to that why question is when they went to the families and found that they were really living in a condition of poverty. And this is what was driving the children out from their homes. And then we asked ourselves, how do we empower those families so that the children cannot be found loitering the street? They can be accorded a family upbringing. And therefore, that's when Undugu started the interventions of finding out what skills do these people have. And the majority of these, and this actually at that time was the people who were living in the slum areas of Nairobi. And they found these people moved from the rural villages to come and find jobs in the city. But because they could not get the jobs, they retreat to the slum areas and they start living in poor conditions. But then most of them had their traditional skills. Like the women who have migrated from eastern parts of the country of Kenya had basket weaving skills, or they could use their hands to make some products. And therefore, Undugu thought that we can develop their skills further and see what kind of products they can make and see whether these products can be marketed. So in short, Undugu tried to help mobilize these women into groups. They started making products, and then the next challenge, where do we take the products? So they created a small shop for the women who would make their products and bring them there to sell. And at that time, because they were involved in a lot of social programs, they could easily get interest from especially the expatriates who are living in Nairobi and all that. And they got interested in these products. And therefore, the whole aspect of how do we improve the people, social living, economic living, using the skills that they have and the products, the raw materials that are within their vicinity. And that is how we created Undugu Fair Trade, that for a long time was a project of Undugu Society of Kenya. But up to 2010, it then developed into a full-fledged social enterprise, an enterprise that actually focuses. We wanted to make sure that it focuses on the fair trade business. and reach out to many families that require these services. And that's how Undugu started, in brief, because I don't want to go into a lot of enterprise. But at the same time, we were, because of the nature of the business, the projects we were doing about social intervention, community work, we were introduced to the then what we were calling the fair trade movement at that particular time, which Bernard referred to. It was an international fair trade alternative. They were calling it alternative trade at that moment. They were not calling it fair trade. It is an alternative to the normal trade. But they thought that instead of giving donations, they could empower these families so that they can use their skills and develop a commercial activity, an income-generating activity, which in a sense makes the people themselves to be more proud of what they are doing, be more to think that they are more independent rather than just being dependable. And this is the whole aspect of how the mix was. So we got linked to the first fair trade organization buyers in Europe, in USA, New Zealand, and Australia. And that is how Undugu Fair Trade has been created. And we still champion the same cause.
Okay, that's fantastic. So it's very exciting to hear that it is possible that in trade, everyone should win, which is really the highlight of our conversation over the next couple of weeks. So thank you for sharing that about Undugu. And if I am correct, and correct me if I'm wrong, there is a shop for Undugu in Westlands, for those of you who are in Kenya, isn't there? And it's on Woodville Avenue, is that correct?
No.
It's no longer there? You moved, okay. So you need to tell us where you are, because people are listening in. They want to know where these products can be gotten, and they don't have to buy them in the Netherlands when they can buy them in Nairobi. So tell us where the Undugu shop is.
Yeah, the shop was temporarily moved from Westlands, and we closed a bit. And now we are setting up a shop in Karen. It's on Gong Road. It's called Karen Village. We are at African Creative Center, office number 15, and we have our shop now running there.
Fantastic. So we're sure we're going to put that in our feed so that anybody who wants to continue to support our artisans from across the country, because they do come from across the country, although, like you mentioned, the genesis was the people who are living in Nairobi. They can be able to purchase those products there. And we'll be sure to make sure to put any information about your website so that those people who are watching globally can also make those orders. Now that, flights are still back, it's very possible for you to pick up those fair trade items. And speaking of fair trade items, I am wearing a fair trade item, but this is not from Undugu though. This I got in Ghana, and it's by the Ghana Fair Trade. It's called Ghana Fair Trade, and they have a small shop in Accra where I got this particular necklace. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But before we continue the same conversation, we had a word from the executive director of World Fair Trade Organization, Sergi Carbalan. And those of you who have joined us, we're having a conversation about how trade can be made fair. So thank you for being with us this morning. If you have any comments, please go ahead and highlight those. And then meanwhile, let's hear the word from Sergi, who was supposed to join us today, but unfortunately couldn't join us for the live chat.
Greetings from Brussels. Greetings from Brussels. My name is Sergi Carbalan from the Fair Trade Advocacy Office, a joint political advocacy office of the World Fair Trade Organization and Fair Trade International. Sorry I cannot be live today at the panel today. I heard it's going to be very interesting. I just wanted to share 3 thoughts with you about a European perspective on fair trade. The fair trade movement started because trade is unfair, and the economy continues to be unfair, unfortunately. If you ask at how much of the value is actually in the hands of small farmers, of workers, it's peanuts. It's obviously large corporations that make the best out of trade. So the case was for fair trade, and it's still the case internationally, but also in every country. So how did it happen in Europe? It was a movement against social justice. It was a movement for social justice and for international solidarity. There were people that were saying, we want to prove that it is possible to trade under fair conditions. And they started setting up workshops, buying from certain cooperative groups in the global south and selling them in Europe. And then it grew into a larger fair trade market now in Europe. Now it's the time for Africa fair trade. It's very important that fair trade doesn't stay only as something linked to international trade, but also to the domestic markets. It's starting in Europe to have domestic fair trade, and it is the time for domestic fair trade in Africa. We look forward to working with you to achieve that. We look forward to exchanging good practices with you about how to set up fair trade schemes, how to link up with social movement, because that was a success factor in Europe. It was not promoting a label, it was promoting a movement and of people. And we look forward with you as well in advocating with the governments to build back fair after COVID. It's very important that the new policies that are being put in place on a sustainable recovery are not only good for the big players, but also good for small producers and workers. Looking forward to working with you. Have a good panel today, and let's keep in touch.
I hope that was as clear for everybody as it was on our end. And and I'm just gonna jump on a couple of phrases that Sergi used, and he talked about the fact that building back sustainably is possible. And I think that especially now, when the whole sort of global trade had seized up the manner in which it did, because of COVID-19, this is a true opportunity to do things differently. I think, Bernard, you're the one who mentioned that, and even you, Fred, you did say that it was originally called alternative trade, right? But actually, it shouldn't be. Trade can be fair, and fairness in pricing, fairness, as Musa said it, to the people who are producing the goods, should not be seen as an alternative way of doing business, but it should be seen as the main way of doing business that is sustainable, right? So as people start to have this conversation about sustainability, I think that the question of fairness should be at the heart of it, isn't it? But now there was also something else that was mentioned there around, solidarity and about, decent work. And Fred, you alluded to that when you said that, one of the part of the impetus behind Undugu shops was really looking at how can all these people have a dignified livelihood? How can they make a living using the skills that they have, right? And how can we make sure that they are being paid properly for the skill that they're bringing to the table? And, there are certain mechanisms that are in place that are being called alternative, or that we're calling fair trade. But can we talk a little bit about what those mechanisms are? Musa, would you care to comment a little bit about, how we can go ahead and put in systems that can lead us towards this fairness in trade?
First of all, I would firstly direct it towards us becoming our brothers' keepers. We need to become more patriotic in our buying patterns. Can we start considering buying local? Can we start considering buying locally made products? And as producer organizations, can we start creating products that cater to the domestic market? I think that's a starting place, especially now as we try and build back better. If we can have our supply chains more local, support the people around you, support the community around you, because that's your direct impact. Those are the people who, as a business, I feel you should be able to reach out to much easier. But within this fair trade concept, I mean, there are 10 principles that the organizations align to about accountability, about transparency. Let us know, what are you doing with the money? Where's the money going? It's not always an easy topic to talk about, but I think if you are in a place where you are vulnerable to your audience, and you can say to them, or to your buyers or your suppliers or whatever, to say, this is the money that I have, and this is what I'm doing with the money. So much is going back to the producers, so much is going into what. That's commendable. It's not normal practice, but it's commendable. There's issues of making sure that you capacitate your employees, the producers, to ensure that they do their job well. They are able to produce and to produce to the best of their capacity. There are issues of environmental issues. Make sure your production process takes care of the environment. You're not dumping, you're not overusing resources, but you're ensuring that as you use the resources, it's in an ethical manner. You are not overfishing, you're not there's no deforestation or whatever in your production process. So the 10 principles, I mean, are the guideline for every organization that is affiliated to WTO to ensure that there is a level of sustainability in what they do.
I'm going to put a little quiz to our listeners. You've talked about these 10 principles. It would be really good to hear from the people who are tuning in if they know any of these 10 principles. So list them down. I'm sure that by the time we're done with this, the ones who've got at least the closest to those 10, Fred and Undugu Fair Trade would be able to throw in a free gift from Undugu Fair Trade, because you've been able to come up with the 10 principles. So please go ahead and type up in the chat and let us know whether you do know those 10 principles. And it would be good to see to hear from you, whether you're applying some of those in the choices that you're making, in the businesses that you're buying from. But yeah, please go ahead and tell us in the comments if you do know those 10 principles. And please don't forget to follow us on Twitter, on our Facebook page, on Instagram, also on YouTube as well. There's a WFTO. All of the acronyms are the same. It's the handle is the same. It's hashtag WFTO Africa. So please follow us on all of these, and like what you see. Go ahead and comment. And as Musa said, I think it's important to reflect those principles even in the buying choices that you're making. So now back to you, Bernard, for a question about systems. Right? We were talking about how can we put in place, or how can we reflect some of these decisions that businesses are making? How does the public know that this particular business is following these 10 principles? Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Thanks, Wangeci. So obviously, for you to be a fair trade enterprise, it means that you must, in your business practices entirely, you must adhere to those 10 principles. But in essence, what these 10 principles mean is that there's a value of credibility that they reflect. It means that you have, in your everyday business practices, you are complying with various social indicators that we are looking at, environmental indicators that we are looking at, issues to do with trading relationships that we are looking at. So in a sense, when you look at a fair trade enterprise and you look at a fair trade product, that product and that enterprise is speaking to you very specific things. So it tells you that this product I'm interacting with, this fair trade enterprise I'm interacting with, is a credible enterprise. I can trace back this product to the source. And so, I mean, one of the challenges that consumers do have is that you interact with the product that you don't know who produced it and
Correct.
And under what conditions it was produced. So a fair trade enterprise represents adherence to those principles, those requirements, those conditions. And of course, this becomes your way of life. It is not something you do today and switch on and off. And there are processes through which it is checked periodically that yes, you continue to comply with those requirements. And we give this a very development approach. So the areas that we obviously continue to improve on as you go along, and when an external person comes to check, and then they're able to verify that yes, Undugu Fair Trade, for example, or Kazuri, or now that Rain, I mean Musa is in South Africa, or Rain or Taco is complying with those requirements on a regular basis.
That's fantastic. But then also there was a little bit about the I guess to put it bluntly, the lobbying that is required in order to have certain laws in place or certain regulations in place that can make this happen. And I know that actually that's one of the reasons where why Sergi's office was set up. The Fair Trade Advocacy Office was set up in order to make sure that that conversation is going on between government and between the fair trade movement to try and see how these principles can be pushed into some regulatory framework. So my question to you is that something that is required if we're going to go back and look at what Musa has challenged us to do, where we're saying, let's buy local, let's understand where our goods are coming from. Is there a need for something to be pushed along those lines in order for that to happen? What are some of your thoughts on that as we look at the conversation around fair trade markets on the continent?
I mean, it is true. I mean, because this is trade, of course, you require the production, the people who are producing the products. You require the consumers, the people who are buying the products. But as it were, trade also requires enabling policies and regulations in place, and governments are best placed to put in place these policies and so on and so forth. And so if you're going to succeed in positioning a fair trade and fair trade products and fair trade practices and sustainable business practices within Kenya, for example, or within the country, for example, then we have to engage with the governments. We have to engage with other actors to look at what sort of policies do we need to develop to be able to facilitate this kind of trade to take place. And so part of, of course, the role of the Fair Trade Advocacy Office in Brussels is traditionally and for a long time lobbying governments within the EU. But it's not any difference for us to be able to begin to speak about fair trade and to position it within our domestic local market. We have no choice but to begin to engage with governments. How do we ensure that we are promoting sourcing of raw materials locally, as opposed to, especially where it's available, as opposed to from somewhere else. And how does that, because by so doing, then you're promoting job opportunities, you're promoting local economy. And so I think we have no option but to begin to engage on those fronts. And this is something that requires the engagement or involvement of different actors.
Absolutely. And I always say that one of my favorite SDGs is number 17, partnership for the goals, right? Because this certainly isn't something that that can be done on our own. And I'm seeing on our comments here that Mwende Mbai has talked about one of the 10 principles of fair trade, and she has talked about respect for the environment. Thank you for your comment. But this is fantastic. We also have Judy Kuniha, who has listed almost all of them. This is great. Environmental sustainability, women empowerment, good working conditions, fairly priced and sustainable, compliant with labor laws, traceability, that all get their fair share, using local material, just as you mentioned, Bernard, to the extent that it's possible. So I think on this particular one, I think the winner at the moment is Judy Kuniha. So please get in touch with us. We shall make sure that you do get something that is made fairly, priced fairly, and sourced locally from Undugu shops. And I'm here with my fair trade mug. Right, this is made by Kazuri, and you know that Kazuri is one of those organizations that are under the WFTO umbrella. And so you do have an opportunity as a consumer in Kenya, as a consumer in South Africa, as a consumer in how many countries do we have producers in, Bernard? I think it's more than 13, isn't it? Where we have different
20 countries in Africa.
Yes, 20 countries in Africa where you can source products that you know that are that have been produced and are being sold under these particular principles. So really and truly look out for that. Look out for that information. It's available on our handle. It's available on the WFTO website. And you can certainly follow us on all the different social media outlets to see what's available and continue that discussion there. So, so thank you for that. Now, I was going to ask a question to Fred, and it goes back to what Musa was talking about. You know, part of this series of conversations, you mentioned that you've been dealing quite a bit with the export market. You've talked about the fact that you have the Karen shop now available. You'd had the shop in Westlands for a long time. And where do you see this market going? Are you, because we have a big push right now. I don't know about South Africa. Maybe you can tell us, Musa. But in Kenya, we've been asked very nicely by our president to do Kenya Friday, right? Where you're supposed to do wears Kenyan sourced clothes every Friday to promote the local industry. It's not Friday, so excuse me, I'm wearing Ghanaian stuff today. One or two Kenyan things, but Ghanaian stuff today. But it is fair trade, like I mentioned. So to what extent do we see these particular policies helping us to push and to grow this domestic market? Which sort of direction do you see this going for Undugu? Could you give us your comments on that, Fred?
Thank you very much. I believe mainly I talk focusing on the producers. And
yes.
You realize that most of the producers, whether is a handcraft producer, whether it's a small farmer, all these people, out of my own experience over 35 years, their production can easily pass the test for fair trade. And most of the products that are already on the market, most of these products can easily be organized and framed as fair trade produced products. The only missing link that these farmers, the producers, are not giving value for their effort in producing that product. So the biggest challenge that we need to do is how do we organize the production? How do we channel the products into an organized marketplace that can actually be seen that these are identifiable fair trade products? Because right now what is happening, nearly all products that are on the market there, when you go to the Masai market, you will find that most of the products you'll find there, those beautiful things that you see, which sometimes are accessories, are various kind of products that we need as consumers. They are just that place, but most of them have been produced by producers who can qualify the aspect of fair trade. So the biggest challenge is how do we now organize and try to see that the market is putting a mark as fair trade. I believe that you have come up with a mark which we need to promote and get to the producer so that these products are marked. And by that product being marked, it means that the producer has benefited, and that exactly will qualify those products to be fair trade. So right now we have very limited. You mentioned Kazuri, we have Undugu shop, and very few shops that can qualify to be fair trade products. But by and large, you'll find that most 60% of what our producers do end up in the commercial market, where they are paid so poorly. So our effort at the moment is try to see how do we create those fair trade platforms that ensures that the producers are properly remunerated for their work that they have put into those products. Because currently the few fair trade organizations, we go an extra mile. Our purpose is actually creating relationship. We do not behave like a commercial buyer who only relates with the product. We create a long-term relationship with the people who are making, so that we can monitor their life changes, how their livelihood is changing by what they are doing. So the most biggest thing that we need to do is how do we now transform our domestic market to appreciate the work of the producers and to label those products as fair trade products, so that even and this message should also reach the consumers, so the consumers can come looking for those fair trade products, because all of us as consumers, we come from families. We want those families' lives to be improved. We want to create more jobs for our people. And especially if I give an example, I'm happy. I've seen a Unity candle just behind you, Wangeci. Thank you for promoting fair trade products. And that is a product that has really been selling for almost 15 years at a high turnover on the local market, on the outside market. It is so funny that people recognize that just by calling it a Unity candle holder, it signifies that the whole continent, the 5 continents, is put together. So we need, as Musa had said, that we need to be our brother's keepers in every business that we engage in. So our purpose as fair trade practitioners is to see how the information, how our producer is benefiting in the trade. And also the consumer must get quality for the products he's doing. And I can testify to you that most of our producers are the ones that are producing the most highly quality products that you can find on the market. Of course, if I walk with you at a Masai market, you'll see everything as the same. But I'll be able to pick out from those kind of jungle products and tell you this is a poorly made product, this is a good product. And all this is because fair trade invests heavily into those producer groups. I'm sure those who are engaged in farming, they invest very heavily into the small farmers. We actually also engage very heavily into our artisans. And over times, you see, when I started into this business, we used to call them handicrafts, and which was giving it a kind of a low market value. But now we are changing with times, because we now call them, we categorize them as home accessories, as fashion, jewelry products, and all that, so that they also are seen as trendy products that can be seen on the market, and therefore also fit into our lifestyles. And therefore, this is something that we need to continue doing. We need to promote our products because we are sure that the market is there, the market is ready, the consumer are willing to pay. The only thing is to create a platform that they can get engaged, they can get information. And one thing that after having being in fair trade for almost 30 years, we've put mechanism, we've put all the structures that can help any upcoming enterprise to pick up the best practices that can make their businesses fair. But all those are already in place. What we need to invest in much more is to talk to the outside world, to talk to the policymakers, to engage the consumers, because that is the most important link in the value chain. To engage, how far are we engaging the consumer so that he can to know that when I go to a supermarket, I can pick a fair trade coffee packet as opposed to any commercial coffee packet. So these are the things that we need to keep on engaging and working, and I think that is the next level where we need to uplift our fair trade movement.
Absolutely. And thank you for all of those points. It goes back to how are we making everybody aware of what is fairly produced product? How can we get to use this? How can businesses get to use this mark so that consumers know that this is available, so that they know that when they're making this purchasing decision, that they are going to be positively impacting the person who made that product, or who grew that coffee, or who grew that tea, or produced those flowers, or came up with who grew those particular vegetables, or made the sandals, right? So you raise a really good point around raising awareness, and I think the task is actually on WFTO and other fair trade movement members to continue to raise awareness.
Wangeci, I'm so sorry. Can I just jump in there? I really want to catch something that Fred said there.
Please, go ahead.
We need to value the power of the consumer. The consumer needs to get to a place where they realize how much power they have in influencing or impacting what they see on the supermarket shelf. And they need to weigh in on that, because once the consumer decides that I am not buying a product that is not made locally, or whose supply chain is largely from the international platforms, then the shop will not stock that product. So also in this platform, I would like us to really conscientize the consumer on the power that they have on what is on the shelf. And that also means that they are supporting the local business. They are supporting locally produced goods. I mean, if we look at an example of what happened, I'm talking about the power of the consumer, what happened with the coffee guys. What are they? The guys who make the coffee internationally. What are they called?
Very many. Which one?
The green ones, the green logo. Starbucks. So there was an incident where Starbucks was not allowing people to breastfeed in their premises. And the people said, then in that case, we are not going to buy from Starbucks. And that's the power of the consumer. When they realized that people were no longer buying their coffee because of that law that they had, then they opened it up that, okay, fine, you can breastfeed in our facilities. You need to realize the power that you have as a consumer. The shop is dependent on you for it to stay alive. So use that power as a consumer and make, while advocacy and policy is good for involving government and all of that, but let's also look at the other parallel of power of the consumer and them evoking their power and ensuring that shops are stocking what they want on their shelf.
And I think one of the things that I think Fred mentioned, well, you alluded to, no, you didn't mention it directly, was the fact that you've had a lot of export markets, right? And that the quality of the products that your artisans are producing is for that export market. And if going back to our favorite tea and coffee, I think it's only now that we're starting to appreciate the coffee that we produce, and people are drinking more and more good, high quality Kenyan coffee, and they're ready to pay the price for that high quality Kenyan coffee. And the same thing goes with tea. It saddens me when you go to visit farming communities and they've done all of this work. They've created a world-class, global standard product, and yet they don't enjoy it in their own home, because in their mind, this is something that is for export. It's not from me. Or you find people buying an international brand that is made with local, let's say a product like tea. It's made with local tea, but somebody will spend extra because of that international brand, but the tea in that packet is local. It's Kenyan. So why are you paying extra when you could have the same quality stuff, support a local brand, and get the same international standard. So I think there's quite a bit to be said around that, around the recognition that we are producing world-class products and that those products are being made available to the consumer here. That the consumer here has the ability, like you said, Musa, to exercise and flex their collective muscle to be able to direct the way the market is going to move. And so if we can raise additional awareness about where these fairly produced products can be found, then we will, be part and parcel of that movement, where we're not waiting for some other change or assistance to be able to provide dignified livelihoods for the farmers and the artisans that we have in our respective countries. But we are using the power of our consumers and our growing consumers to be able to provide that particular platform. So, I really thank all of you here on this platform today. For those of you who commented and continue to follow us on our social media handles, please use the hashtag #IChooseFairTrade. And also the hashtag that is running on the ticker below. So follow us on that one, hashtag #IChooseFairPrice, hashtag #IChooseFairTrade, and part of the conversation that we'll continue to have. We're going to be online live again on Friday at 11 o'clock East African time. So please join us for that. Give us your comments. And Fred, thank you so much for being a part of this. We're excited that you have your new shop that will come and visit in Karen. Those of you who are outside of Kenya or outside of Nairobi, don't worry, they do delivery. So go on their website and order what you need, and we'll make sure that they get it to you. Also look at the WFTO websites to see all these different shops and partners that are part of this, that are making sure that what it is that you are purchasing is, the most important thing is that the producer, the one whose sweat equity, effort that was put in at the start of the whole production, that particular person who is so often cut out of the benefits, that person has been remunerated fairly for the effort that they put in. So look out for that. Flex your consumer muscle that way. Because every single time you make a purchasing decision, you are indicating what it is that is reflecting your values. And we hope that those values are part and parcel of those 10 principles of fair trade. And Judy and Wende, thank you for participating. Judy, we will be sending you something from Undugu Shops. Please get in touch with us. You can directly message us with your contact details, and we'll get that Undugu prize over to you. And again, thank you, Musa. Thank you, Bernard, Fred. Before we log off, we've got 4 minutes to go. I would really appreciate it to hear your parting shot. So each of you get one parting shot before we log off. And Fred, we'll let you go first. Hello, Fred. Give us your parting shot before we log off.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank all the people who joined us in this live streaming about fair trade. Fair trade is a practice that actually, as I said before, it focuses on the people, it focuses on the trade, and then it focuses on the planet. So you will find that this is the only kind of model of trading that will ensure that we have a fair world. We have a world that everybody has an opportunity to explore their skills and earn a decent living out of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fred. Bernard, please go ahead and give us your parting shot.
Thanks, Wangeci, and everyone else. The idea behind this conversation really is to acknowledge that trading with fair trade partners in the global north is still an important thing. We are not saying that it's not important. It is important. It will continue to be the case. but the conversation is to sort of shift our thinking to begin to create sufficient demand of fair trade product within our domestic market. And this is the reason we are beginning this conversation. And that demand, of course, will also invite the need for growing the supply. So growing the number of enterprises that are integrating fair trade within their business practices. And so we hope that this journey will take us there. It is a long way to come, but we think that in the end, we should be able to create enough demand of fair products within our domestic markets.
Okay, thank you. Musa, tell us.
Okay, so I will just reiterate. We are our brother's keepers. You need to get to a place where you realize that if I buy something local, I am ensuring that my brother's job is sustained, that he can make a living, he has money to feed his family. So we need to get to a place where we start to look at, consider, prioritize locally made products. Let's be proud of the products that we're making. Let's wear them proudly, use them proudly, enjoy them. We are making them, it's the labor of our hands, and let us take pride in that. Yeah, that's my question.
Thank you. Thank you, all of you, so much. Those of you who are tuning in, thank you for joining us today. Let's pick up the Musa Challenge for the week. Well, we get back in on Friday. You can send us pictures on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter when you've purchased your locally made World Fair Trade Organization product. Let us know where you found it and how you're enjoying it. Let's keep this conversation going. And as Bernard said, you know, it's time that we started to grow this movement and to recognize all of this effort that our fellow farmers and artisans and other producers are putting into making sure that we have all of these lovely products to enjoy. But at the same time, and most importantly, we're recognizing their effort and remunerating them fairly for all of these efforts that they're making. So flex your collective muscle, all of you. Let's continue to be part of this movement. Let's tune in again on Friday at 11 a.m. East African time. And let's keep choosing fair. Thank you all.
Thank you.
What can you, we do? Unite to change, empower, lead and innovate. Because fair trade matters.